The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Hello, welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's a Monday, another week in the rib.
It is, and you know, it's been really interesting because the whole story behind the mayor and the allegations still hasn't stopped. And I think it's actually gotten more traction than a lot of other news. But of course, on our Mondays, we always start out with our good friend over at the Herald News, Marc Dion. Again, his column is very good. Too soon to yell, busted over FBI claims. And you know, he's right. We hear this claim every year like clockwork. You know, somebody's going to be taken out in handcuffs, and we don't know. But what I think is the worst part about this is that the zombies, these moronic nitwits, which all climb together, and they get in the same pea pod, and they turn around and they're like, he did nothing wrong, and da-da-da-da-da, and, oh, you know, you're just against him because you don't like him. These are the same people that if you had a video of him shooting somebody, they'd say, oh, it's a fake, it's a mock video, you can't do it. Understand something. Nobody is saying that he did it. Nobody's saying that he didn't do it. We're saying that it's an allegation. And, you know, the mayor did say something on the air a couple of times where he turned around and he said, hey, you know, anyone can call the FBI. Anyone can call HUD and file a complaint, and they have to investigate it. It doesn't mean that it's a valid complaint, but it also doesn't mean it's not valid. And for these zombie buffoons, pea pod dwellers, to turn around and say, well, the FBI didn't confirm it, so therefore he's not guilty and he didn't do anything and there's no investigation, so it's a lie. You know, I said this weekend in the flush, yeah, that must be that new law. We call it the shredder law. You must notify all politicians 6 months in advance so they have enough time to shred all the documents. The FBI is never going to confirm it.
Well, you know, I mean, we all know that we are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. However, we know in politics it's an old political trick to come out with an accusation, whether it's true or untrue, and then the majority of people will only remember the original allegation. And we've covered. I think we basically, Marc Dion's column is basically reiterating what we kind of said. We said there are a lot of allegations. Allegations are not anything more than allegations. And there's been no trial, as he said, no trial, no conviction, no anything. But we did say, and I said, there is a difference between an allegation and something that's not an allegation. When somebody says he gave him a check, and as I said, he could have commented on that. And to reiterate, you know, I understand that he doesn't want to say that Snow Owl wasn't a big success because he wants to run a city.
Right.
Even Mr. Monroe said, he said, back before the election, I was writing that Snow Owl didn't seem to exist. Well, we know it exists because we found we found that they are a real entity. However, did they make a profit? Probably not. So, this is all speculation, and as wrong as the people are who have him convicted, the people who have him innocent are also wrong. Because as your favorite term, zombie, they're immediately vindicating him. This is fake news. This is news. It's just, it's news. These things they're out there. There are allegations, and they were reported as just that, allegations. They weren't they didn't convict them. Nobody convicted them. We're not convicting them. Marc Dion is not convicting him. But they are something to talk about. There are things here that make you think. You know, those checks were written. I think that, at least in my opinion, maybe he feels he doesn't need to address it because he wants to address the whole context. He's hoping that address comes after the election.
Right.
But the fact is, I think that, you know, people said they wrote him checks, and I'm sure they have the checks. So he could have at least addressed and said, yeah, I did get money. It's like if you borrow money from somebody and you know, if you borrow money from a bank and then you don't want to acknowledge the fact that you did get money from a bank, you do kind of owe us, you know, at least I feel you could have at least addressed that particular portion.
And again, you know, if that money was truly, and again, I'm saying if that money was truly an investment, well, you know what? There's no guarantee of a return on investment.
True.
You could make a windfall, you could make a little bit, you could make nothing.
And that's exactly the response you would expect from
That's what I would have expected, yes.
Except a politician.
Right.
Because a politician is not going, because that response, as correct as it is, and we all know that, and we would accept that, in the world of politics, which is a alternate universe compared to what we live in, the admission of failure, or the fact that you are not omnipotent and know everything, is basically a way to not get elected.
Right.
Because they feel that the people cannot understand this, and they will take it out against them in the polls. I mean, as you said, to me, that was a no-brainer. The check for $80,700 or $380,000 plus dollars, and then it wasn't an allegation. It was testified to under oath by Mr. Garcia.
That he gave him money as well.
That he paid over money as well. I mean, it's a simple thing. It was easy enough to say Snow Owl is did exist. Did it make a profit? Probably not. And that's, I think, the reason, because, you know, an average businessman would say exactly what you said, CJ. Look, you invest, it's like when you buy stock. You're not guaranteed to make money. That's why we had a depression in 1929. Because, buying stock is not a guarantee
That's
you're
right.
going to make money. And investing in a business is not a guarantee that business is going to be successful. It's a chance you take. But however, I don't think someone, and I understand probably. It's the fact is he's running to run a multi-million-dollar corporation called the City of Fall River with an unlimited source of revenue, the taxpayer.
Right.
So you don't want to admit that you're a really crappy businessman and you want to run a multi-million-dollar business with an unlimited checkbook. So that part of it is a fact. The rest of the stuff, allegations are allegations. Are they, are these allegations that funds were not used adequately or properly, or they were misused, or whatever the allegations, and who knows how many there are. There's 3 different sets of them. The fact is that the only thing we do know is apparently he did receive money from these people, and there is proof of that, and it could have been addressed. And I understand he wants to hold it back and maybe address the whole issue because it's more politically expedient for him. So I guess this is going to be a topic of conversation for a little while.
Yeah, I think so. Will Richmond's column this weekend, his Politi-Beat column, said that Donald Trump has no reason to run for local office. And I agree. I understand that whole Donald Trump call to arms, for the lack of a better expression, seemed to raise the voters off their lazy backsides. But does that mean you have to run for office? I mean, I started looking at some of the people who are running for office. Right now, there's only 2 school committee people who are also, by the way, minorities who are running, and they're both female. I haven't seen anyone else pull papers yet. But in the city council, we have people like Trot Joseph Lee, Mr. Well, show me the evidence. No, it's not my job to show you the evidence. It's your job to get it. That's the job of the city councilor. The job of a city councilor is to go out and investigate what's going on. It's not for the citizens to do the investigation for you. This is what I told the city council a few weeks ago. I said it's a shame that a citizen has to do the investigation that you could do yourselves, but you've failed to do it. And with Mr. Lee turning around telling me every time I've brought stuff to him, well, prove it to me. Show me the evidence. Prove it to me. I don't got to show you anything. If you don't believe what I'm saying, go out and prove me wrong. But when you come up in a manner that is very confrontational, you automatically put me in a position where I don't want to cooperate with you. Is that too hard to understand? I don't know, Chip. How would you feel?
Well, no, you're right. To me, and as I said, these are, it's not my opinion that they are our representatives. It's our form of government.
That's right.
Republic. So, city councilors are our elected representatives, and by our own state constitution, they are at all times answerable to us. But they're also, in my opinion, our advocates. And when somebody brings them an issue, as you have and other people have, I'm not going to vote for a city councilor who says, show me the evidence. I'm going to say that, this is an issue, and I believe that it should be checked into. I mean, if you say that you don't believe that the, houses are being inspected properly, or mills are being inspected, what does he want you to go out and inspect the mills?
I guess so.
That's the time for a city council to call the fire department, ensure that they're checking the mills,
right,
check the documentation, or go out and check them himself. During political season, you've seen a lot of politicians become very involved in things like this, basically advocating for their constituencies. And this is something that our government has fundamentally broken down. It's a self-interest group, and as we see on every level, where the federal government wants to pass a health care plan, but they make sure they exempt themselves from any negative parts of that health care plan. And we see it, even Will Richmond, it said, he talks about Westport, and there are three open seats in Westport, and they were all, let me find it so I'll quote it exactly. In Westport, 3 people ran for 2 seats on selectmen, all white men. Well, okay, so, to me, that's creating an issue where there's no issue. So they happen to be white. So are we going to begin to make everything everything about race? As you said, Joseph Lee is running. We have minorities running. And this is one of the reasons, to segue into something else.
Yeah, but before we move on,
that I oppose the charter change.
You're right.
Making it more difficult to run for public office deals, directly impacts, and it impacts more severely minority groups, because, if you're a Cambodian, a lot of Cambodians don't vote a lot. It's cultural with them. They, and for some reason, and that's something that politicians should be cultivating. Try to get them out to vote, get them involved in the process. But Westport's a fairly, in comparison to Fall River, affluent area. Most people that are living in Westport are living in single-family houses. There's not a lot of 3-deckers in Westport. There's not a lot of, low-income housing in Westport. So, to imply that, they have, that they, they're all white. Well, I'm sure there are minorities that live in Westport. Did you ever think maybe they just don't feel like running, or they're satisfied with the government there? This article, to me, lacks a very important perspective. That there are many, many cases where a lot of people don't run. And it's not because of disgust for the government, or because they're just too lazy to run. They're at places, actually, that are satisfied with whoever's in government. You don't see a lot of people. I'm not sure there's a huge turnover in the Newton City Council. I'm not sure there's a huge turnover in Wellesley's town council. Those people may be satisfied with the representation they're getting. Maybe that's a factor, Will. That may be a factor. Now, the key to me is not how many people run. Of course, it disturbs me when people run unopposed that I feel are not doing the job. But what's more important is you have to accept the consequences of your own actions. As long as you make it as easy as possible for somebody to run, which our new charter won't, which is why I oppose it, but as long as it's easy enough to run, as long as you don't need millions of dollars like you do to run for federal office, as long as you can walk down to City Hall or Government Center and get some papers and get a few signatures, and like I said, I wouldn't care if it was one signature, and you can run for office, the opportunity is there. If people do not avail themselves of the opportunity and government makes it as easy as possible for the people to be involved in government, it is then the people's choice, and therefore they get the government they deserve. That's the reality.
Well, that is a reality. And you know, before we move on, because we got two conflicting stories coming up, you know, another candidate who's running is Jason Springer. Now, this is a man who's been so connected to the mayor employed him. The mayor called him out at the State of the City address with Bruno Pereira, whatever his name is. So, you know, you've got to look at what these people are doing in their private life, in their actions with other individuals and other things. Yeah, granted, Jason Springer is very active with community youth and, you know, a youth basketball thing and all this other stuff. But if you don't like the mayor, why would you want Jason Springer? Just like if you don't like a guy to turn around and tell you, hey, show me the evidence, why would you vote for Trot Joseph Lee? If you don't like the fact that my family's been here for 8 generations, why would you vote for Stephen Long? You know, you've got to look at the entire picture. You can't just say, nice guy. Oh, he's my friend's cousins, brothers, sisters, whatever. You know what? You've got to be complete in your review of the candidates. And then we've got candidates that are running for 2 offices. You've got Ron Cabral running for mayor and for city council. And we've seen how much of a fiasco that's been with numerous candidates.
Well, you know, you're right. But I mean, look, I'm not saying no evidence. I mean, you can't go to some city council candidate or some city councilor saying that we're being invaded by aliens.
Well, that's
without
true.
Being able to produce a flying saucer or a little green man. But you know, when people go before the city council with a complaint, they normally have something.
Right.
That doesn't mean exhaustive investigation. You don't want sworn depositions and pictures of anything. If somebody goes in and says, look, the streets are being poorly maintained and you're running for city council, you're a city councilor, you know, you should have enough, enough advocacy in your blood to go up to that person and or ask that person at the meeting, you know, what streets are you talking about, or what street are you talking about in particular? And that person would probably tell you, because I don't know most people who go in front of the city council and make general statements like, we can all say this city is in deplorable condition, but you got to be a little bit more specific. So, I mean, when you ask for specifics, it's not, but I mean, these people want you to basically prove it to the point where it's almost, you're preparing a court case, and that I think is wrong. But it's a fine line. I would not say, if somebody said, well, what exactly are you talking about? I would be able to give them an example, but then it's up to them to follow up. I mean, as representatives and advocates for the people, that's the way it should be.
And again, during political season, the one thing you don't do is get adversarial.
Yeah.
Okay, you just don't. And you know, that happened last night with Men Who Cook. Men Who Can Cook event, okay? Allegedly, you notice I'm saying allegedly, the mayor went from table to table, and there were certain tables he avoided because there were certain people at them. And you don't want to generate that persona. And you know, the one thing I can always, right, but you know what? The one thing I can always remember for many, many years, from Carlton Viveris to Eddie Lambert to John Mitchell, even to Will Flanagan, even if they didn't like you, even if they knew you didn't like them, they always put their hand out, they always said hello, and they always had a smile, because perceptions become the reality.
And you're right, CJ. I mean, it's changed. As you said, things have become far too adversarial on all levels of government. I mean, look, I attended many functions and the firefighter union had a table, and we were in a bit of contract, dispute with mayors, whoever it was. Maybe it was Carlton Viveris, maybe it was Ed Lambert. But if we were at a breakfast or something for somebody or some charity, and he came over and, how you doing? And, we all knew, and we would extend the same courtesy. It's a public, everybody knew what was going on between us and the mayor. But the fact is, it's politics, and you understand that they're going to come over and say, how you doing? Because in reality, that's what should be done, because it's not personal. The fact is, Eddie Lambert and I, nobody was more adversarial than Eddie Lambert and I when he was mayor. And he was actually my next door neighbor. And when he was in the yard, he'd say hello to me, and I'd say hello to him, and his wife would talk to me over the fence, and his son actually used to come and swim when I had a pool for my kids when they were small. He'd come over and actually swim in the pool. So, I mean, the acrimony was about an issue, not personal. And see, that's the whole thing. That seems to have left the realm of politics now. Everything is personal, and you can't leave it at the door. You can have different political views and still, you can still get along. And as I said, Carlton Viveris and I, to this day, when Carlton sees me, he comes over. Or if I see Carlton, I'll go over and say hello. And we had some bitter contract disputes. And Ed Lambert and all the mayors. John Mitchell, I see John Mitchell all the time on a track. And when I'm up walking my dog and he's walking on a track, so we always have, really good conversations about politics and personally, because it was never personal. And, that's something I think that's really, really stopping a lot of progress in the city of Fall River.
Well, yeah, and that's it, because everything is me, you. You don't like me, I don't like you, and we're not going to talk. And you know what? Nothing gets accomplished that way. And you know me, business is business and personal is personal. I've had knockdown, drag-out fights with politicians, with many, many people. And afterwards, it's like, it's over, it's done. You want to have a drink, you want to grab dinner, whatever the case may be. Nice to see you, I'll catch coffee with you later, whatever. But again, that's kind of, I guess, the old school method of politics, which, seems, as you said, to be dying off very rapidly. There were 2 columns this weekend that were posted, actually over the past week. One was posted on April 24th from Fordham University, "Stop Calling Your Drug Addiction a Disease," written by Brianna Lyman. And she says, drug addiction has increasingly become more problematic over the last few years with the opioid epidemic, tearing apart families and leaving communities vulnerable to drug dealers and violence. Addiction treatment has become more widely available, and the stereotypes surrounding addicts have definitely changed. Bold, bold words. However, one thing remains constant, and that is addicts and enablers labeling drug addiction as a disease. And I think one of the best quotes in this is, "Let me take you into a cancer ward, then try telling me you have a disease." You choose to smoke weed, you choose to shoot up heroin, you choose to snort cocaine, you choose to buy prescription pills that you did not need. You choose this. How is that a disease? Okay? People with cancer didn't choose cancer. People with diabetes didn't choose diabetes. People with epilepsy didn't choose epilepsy. People with lupus didn't choose lupus. So how does this become a disease when you choose to do it? This is an issue of enablers, okay? This isn't a disease of choices, because it's not a disease. So she closes the article with, so please stop playing the victim role, thinking you have a disease that you brought on yourself because of your choices. Stop crying the blues because you screwed up and want the world to take pity. And for the love of God, stop acting like you are as sick as a cancer patient. I've seen plenty of people do this. This woman is absolutely right. And, you know, she doesn't come from a reputable place. You know, she only comes from Fordham University.
Yeah, well, you know, the fact is she's right. We discussed this
Numerous times.
Last show that when we talked about giving it a name now in the American Society for Addictive Medicine.
Yeah, it's now a brain disorder.
Now. And it's right, because look, when you have a reoccurrence of cancer, you didn't go out and swallow a cancer cell pill. You didn't shoot a needle full of cancer cells into your body. You had no choice. You're a victim of an insidious disease. When you have a disease, malaria, and you get another bout of malaria, you don't go out and round up a whole herd of Anopheles mosquitoes that carry malaria and sit in a room and let them sting you to give you malaria again, or that is in your bloodstream and you get a relapse. You know, but when you relapse on drugs, you physically have to take those drugs. And that's a choice. Nobody walked you down and put a bottle of oxycodone or put a heroin needle in front of you and held a gun to your head to shoot up. And I'm sorry. It's a choice. I don't care what you know, how you try to spin it. This is about, as she said, enablers and people who are going to make a profit from this, spinning it so we can invest trillions and trillions of dollars into this thing that's a never-ending, it will never end. The war against drugs began in the late 60s, early 70s, and here we are in a different century. And it's worse than it's ever been.
We're still beating that dead horse.
You can't throw, this is the government and programs that thrive off money and are really fueled by money, and a government that loves to just spend as much as you can. And what they're doing is, it's the age-old solution that government has. Throw money at it. Let's throw money at this problem, and we've been throwing money at it since 1968. So here we are, 50 years later.
Yep.
And
still doing the same thing.
Is far worse than it was then.
Right.
So, I mean, this is...
But you know, the thing is, the Herald News published a guest opinion by Robert Borden Hitt, who was the program director of Project Aware at STAR. And I'm just going to give you this closing quote in here, which is, in the guise of Fall River has done enough, we rail against the proposed expansion of services at STAR. In the 1980s, we called this the not in my backyard syndrome. Today, we call it addiction bias. Surely it allows for a degree of separation that may make some of us feel better, but it does little to heal the problem. So as I head out of work, I wish this fair city well. Continue to work together to take control of this city's killer. You're not going to take control of it as long as there are people like you, Mr. Hitt, and people like Nancy Paul and Starr who are going to keep saying this is a disease.
And guess what? The more money they pump in, the bigger pay raise he'll get. He'll get paid more.
Well, he's leaving. He actually left STAR. That's the problem.
Huh?
Okay? He left STAR.
Well, he'll be going somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, he'll go somewhere else now.
With this resume and this attitude, look, people are making money off this, and you know, this insidious problem is never going to go away.
Never is, never will, and that's just the way it is.
Angry people.
Have a great weekend. A great week.
See you on Hump